have his people get closer to him. Now you see, this is a tent right here. It's called the Tabernacle. Or the tent of meeting, remember, was outside the camp, right? Logan, Sarah, we talked about that last week. But this is the Tabernacle with the Holy of Holies in it. We're going to talk about the Holy of Holies. Here, I'll put this up here. This is a picture of the Holy of Holies. And it was a place called the mercy seat. Here, I'm gonna put the camp back here, all right? It was a place that was gold, and it's a replica of what's in heaven. So in heaven, when Moses was on Mount Sinai, remember, up here on these big tall mountains, when Moses was up there meeting with God, God showed him in heaven what there was. And so Moses had to make and have the children of Israel make those things, and then he could come after they had cleansed everything with blood, because sin cannot be removed except for by blood being shed. And Jesus is the last sacrifice. His blood was the most powerful blood, and he was the final sacrifice. So no more sheep or goats or cows had to be killed anymore, okay? And so after everything was cleansed by the blood, then God's presence came. And he was there with the children of Israel. And they could come and ask questions of God. They could come and be clean of their sin. And God was there over what is called the Ark of the Covenant, or the mercy seat, which looked very much like this. All right? Isn't that cool? How many of you would like to talk to God and have him talk to you, right? Do you know what? We can do that today, because Jesus, his presence now lives inside of you when you ask Jesus to live in your heart. And you can talk to him and go to him anytime and not have to kill a lamb to get there. Okay? That's pretty cool, right? So, God was talking to Moses, and he said, Mo, because remember, they were friends, so he probably gave him a nickname. In fact, I heard from a lady who's been to heaven that God does have nicknames for each one of us. And it's a name that only he and you know, and they're usually short names, not big long ones. Isn't that cool? So anyway, God was talking to Moses. He says, hey, Mo. He said, these are all the things I want you to make. And he said, now, this is another thing. This is part of, it's the candlestick holder that needed to be inside of the tent of meeting there. And so he asked people, and he said to them, and he's told Moses, I have given to certain people wisdom and the Holy Spirit on the inside of them, and I've given gifts to them to be able to make these things. They have talent now that they didn't have before, because I gave them those gifts. All right? So there was women who came, who knew how to sew, and they sewed up together all the materials, which we're going to talk about next week, actually, because they gave these huge offerings. And they sewed up all these materials to make all of the curtains that went around, and to make these were made out of seal skin, and also other skins. There was more than one layer that went around the tent. And also to make, that's Aaron the priest. They had to make the priestly garments for Aaron, okay? And for the other priests that worked there. And they had to be made a certain way. It was cool. You know what was really cool? Okay. On the priest, he wore an ephod. Do you know what an ephod is? It's this square thing that has stones in it. And each stone represented one of the tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel. And they each were different colors. And they could take the Urim and Thummim, and they could ask God questions. I mean, God would speak directly to Moses. But the priests, they could throw the Urim and the Thummim, and God would speak to them, and the ephod would light up. And there was different words that went with the different stones. And God would speak to them and spell out and show them things by lighting up the stones on the ephod so they could see what was going on. Isn't that cool? I mean, that's like so cool. God is awesome. But now he speaks directly to your heart. You don't have to have stones to light up. You are the living stone, God said in the Bible. And God lights you up and speaks to you directly. Also, he put it, I'm going to go there. Let's go over, if you have your Bible, go to Exodus 35. And we're going to read a couple of scriptures before we finish up here today. If I can find my right glasses. I realized I was
all
worshiping.
of today's class.
As long as normal. Okay?
Like
So we're
cars.
going to go to Exodus. So that's the second book in the Bible, Logan. Exodus 35. No. Yes. Verse 25.
Pastor, are you gonna have me come out, or can I do this?
You can take that off and then come back. Yeah. Okay, everybody, look at this. It says in verse 25, Exodus 35. Can you help him, Jose, to get there? You got it?
Almost there, man. Keep going.
Awesome. Verse 25.
Verse 25.
It says, all the women who had ability. Where do you think they got their gifts, their ability? God. All the women who had ability and were wise-hearted spun with their hands and brought what they had, spun of blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. And all the women who had ability and whose hearts, listen, this is important, you hear this, whose hearts stirred them up. You know you have a gift from God when you get excited about doing something and your heart stirs you up towards that direction. Now, it doesn't mean that every single affection and thing that you get excited about is from God, okay? But if you go to God and say, man, God, I'm really excited about this. Like Alexa, a couple of years ago, I hear that you started wanting to learn guitar, wanting to, right? Is that correct? And so you started to have a stirring on the inside to want to do that, right? Yeah, that's a gift. That's so cool, right? And it says here, all the women who had ability and whose hearts stirred them up in wisdom spun the goat's hair. Now let's skip over to verse 30. Everybody look at verse 30. And Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord has called by name Bezaleel. Okay, here's one of the guys. Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And he has filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship. Bezaleel was one of the guys that made each one of these things for the Ark of the Covenant. Just like Logan, your dad, can build, Bezaleel had a gift to build. Just like you might one day have a gift to build or to create. Your mother's very gifted in creating things. You probably, I've seen in families that the giftings in that family carry to the children. Okay? You also probably will be gifted in building and creating and making things. All right? Logan, you'll probably be gifted too in some things that your mama and your daddy are gifted in, but maybe God will give you your own special gift too. I know you're gifted with athletics. You're very gifted with that. Okay? And it says here, in verse 31, God has filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and understanding and knowledge and all manner of workmanship to devise curious works, to work in gold, in silver, and in brass, and in cutting of stones to set them, and in carving of wood to make any manner of cutting work. And he has put in the heart that he may teach, both he and Oholab. I guess that's how you say that name. This guy's Oholab, the son of Ahisamach of the tribe of Dan. Them has he filled with wisdom of heart to work in all manner of work, to the engraver, to the cunning workman, of the embroiderer in blue and in purple, in scarlet and in fine linen, and of the weaver, even of them that do any work, and of those that devise cunning work. Everything you do when you work, it's a gift of God that you can ask him for wisdom to help you do. Years ago, we didn't have a lot of money at Christmas. We only had one child back then, and we had Brian Jr., who's actually coming for his daddy's birthday. I don't know if he knows about it yet, but he's coming. Anyway, we had Brian Jr., and Brian would watch Gospel Bill Gunter. If you've ever seen any of those shows, he would watch that, and do you know what he would do? He would get on the backside of our couch, and he would ride it like a horse. And that's how he would pretend. And so he was doing that all the time. And so I told my husband, I said, because we didn't have money really at Christmas. We were very poor at the time. But God provided always. And so I told my husband, I said, we need to build him a rocking horse. A full-size one that we can ride. And he said, My husband worked for Park Allwine, a roofer in Tulsa. And so he asked Park, he said, Park, can we go into the shop and use the scrap wood that's in the trash truck? Can we use that to make a horse for Brian Jr.? And you know what? Park knew Brian because he used to watch him for us when I was pregnant with Annie. They would watch Brian for us, and I would go to the hospital to get, checked and things like this. And Park knew Brian. He loved Brian. He's like, yeah, you come to the shop and use any scraps you can find. And so we just believed God. We went to the store. We didn't have hardly anything. We went to a lumber store next to Rama. It's no longer there. It was Sutherland's. And we went there, and we were looking around about what we could buy to take, to use, to build something. And we were believing God for the gift to know what to do. And as we were standing in the aisle, we looked, and do you know what we saw? We saw an idea. We saw a sawhorse in the aisle. And I looked at my husband, I said, look at that. I said, that's the frame of the horse. I said, look at it and see how it's built so we can do that. That will be the frame of the legs and of the body. And so he looked at that, and we got what we needed then. We went to Park's shop. Long story short is we spent, I think, a couple days building it. And we built this rocking horse. And we went to an upholsterer down the street who gave us foam for free, foam scraps for free. And we were able to cover the horse with these foam scraps. And then the expensive part was the material for the outside, the skin of the horse. Okay? And so we bought that, and I made a mane. The Lord showed me how to make a mane and a tail. And we didn't know what to do for the rocking horse part of it. How to fit this, because the horse is huge, okay? We're like, okay, after we got that far, we're going to go, what are we going to do for the rocking part of the rocking horse? We were believing God. And we were standing there, and we happened to be praying and looking around. We looked at the other side of the shop. There was a template for what's called an eyebrow window. That template was the perfect rocking horse template for us to use. So we took some scrap wood, and you can see it today. It's up at our house. And we cut that template, and it was the perfect rocker for that rocking horse. God gave us a gift to be able to make that year. Now, poor Brian, he had to stay in his room because we had to make it, like Christmas Eve, we had to finish it up. So we had to keep him in his room the entire day. But the thing of it is, he had a huge rocking horse afterwards that he got to ride, and all of us could get on it. By that time, we had Annie, and we all four have a picture of us all four on it all at once. But God has given you gifts, boys and girls. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to thank God for those gifts.